and welcome to this event, Crypto Explained. My name is Kasper Vagle. I am a PhD student from the Norwegian School of Economics, and I study economic crime and corruption, and I'll be the host for this talk today. First, I want to thank you, Bergen Global, for hosting this event, and the panel for taking time to join this discussion. So together with me today, I have Chunlei, which is an associate professor in cryptography at the UIB, Håvard Terland, which is a PhD in mathematics at NTNU, and we have Mørch with us on the internet, who is an entrepreneur and managing partner at Braver. And the goal with this event is to kind of touch upon different topics related to blockchain, and that there's not a requirement to have any formal knowledge of it. So we'll try to keep it simple, avoid a lot of abbreviations and jargon. And we also leave 15 minutes to the end where you can come with questions. And then you can also ask questions in the chat, right? Yes. So you were promised Crypto Explained, and we will touch upon a mixed flavor of topics like what crypto and blockchain is, what is going on in El Salvador, crypto and energy. We'll touch upon these monkeys and penguins that you might have seen as digital art, and the possibilities of committing and combating crime. So then we'll start with an introduction of the panelists before we start the talk. So Chunlei, can you talk a bit about who you are, your affiliation, and what your link to crypto is?
Yeah, thanks. And also, I'd like to thank Bergen Global first to invite me for this event. My name is Chunlei. I'm originally from China. I did my PhD 10 years ago in the Department of Informatics in the University of Bergen. So my major topic is mainly in cryptography and coding theory. So these are the two major research fields of mine. I have been learned blockchain-related topics 3 years after I finished my PhD. So I am personally interested in this very exciting new technology. So hopefully we can have an interesting discussion today. Thanks.
Yes, Håvard.
My name is Håvard Terland. I'm not yet a PhD, but a PhD candidate at NTNU. I work in pure mathematics, so it has nothing to do with cryptography, or it has something to do, but not directly. I got interested in cryptocurrencies in 2017. I think a lot of people did. I was very fascinated with the idea of Bitcoin as some kind of digital gold. And I realized that I don't know anything about it really, and I continued researching and learning about it, and I still don't know, I think, what drives the price up or down, which is, I think, one of the major things we see in the news, and the price is very high or very low. But I think I have some ideas, and I think we can have a very interesting discussion about this topic, not only Bitcoin, of course, but yes. So I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Can we hear from you, Jakob?
Hello, everyone. Nice to be able to call in from across the mountains. So I'm Jacob. I'm based in Oslo at the moment, but I studied at NTNU back in the day. And I run a small consultancy called Braver, which mostly works on innovation projects for clients. And my link to crypto is pretty straightforward. I'm just I'm not technical enough to understand what's, to be honest, what's going on under the hood. But I've sort of like jumped in because I think the tech and the possibilities are exciting. So I've sort of like just jumped head in, bought loads of NFTs, explored different blockchain use cases. And I think I can bring a perspective from sort of the user's side to this panel.
Great, thank you. So as you can see, we have a good panel here with a lot of expertise. And I think we'll jump straight into kind of getting an overview of what is blockchain and what is cryptocurrency. So Chunlei, can you kind of give us an introduction of what this is?
Yeah, I will try. So first of all, I'd like to speak some words about cryptography. I think some of you have heard of cryptography, this word. It has a pretty long history, but for modern cryptography, it has different functions. Basically, it is used to protect our data. And within blockchain, within cryptography, it has two important primitives used for blockchain. One is called hash function, and the other one is called digital signature. So for hash function, you can consider it as a box, and you have some data goes into the box, and the output of this box will be a fingerprint of this input data. So this fingerprint property is very important. It means that if we have slight change of the input data, then the output will be totally different. So this is one most important function of hash function. And another primitive is called digital signature. So from signature, you can see it's like we write our signature on some paper, or like when you get your degree, you got the diploma with the university is stamped. So for digital signature, it means that this signature is used in the digital world. And it has a very strong property like in the physical world. So if you have a signature for a file or for a data, it means this signature is bound to this data, bound to this file, bound to this document. And it means that no one else can forge this signature. So only the signer has the exact signature. These two primitives are of fundamental importance to the blockchain. So now let's say some words about blockchain. Blockchain started started in 2008. It was invented by a pseudonym called Satoshi Nakamoto. And he proposed the idea, and that's the major idea behind Bitcoin, that most people get interested into this area later on. And what this Bitcoin is, so basically it uses the idea of combining hash functions and digital signatures to store some data. But since it's a Bitcoin, it relates to financial transactions. So this kind of data we consider as financial transactions. Like if you want to send some money to a friend, this is one transaction. So in the early stage of blockchain, we all talk about transactions as data, which are stored in the blockchain. Now let's think of how this data is stored in the blockchain. And for the blockchain, this word, you can divide it into two terms. First, block, then chain. What it means, so for the block, it's like a box used to store all these transactions. And suppose we have some transactions at the moment, then we store all these transactions to these blocks. And then we take a hash function of this box, and we get the output, right? We mentioned we get this output. Then at a later time, maybe tomorrow, then this output will be used as a part of a next block. So tomorrow we have also many transactions. We store all these transactions in this box. Then these two boxes are chained together. Then the output of the first box will be stored as well in the second box. So this, like the first block is chained to the second block. And then the day after, we have many transactions. Then we calculate the output of the second box. We have the output, that's the hash function output. Then we put the output into the third box, and so on and so forth. So this is how this chain works, link each block together. And you see it's starting, it's like, it's a chain in the Trojanical order. So we have the first block, then we have the chain to the second block, we have the chain to the third block, and to the fourth, to the fifth, and so on and so forth. And in this whole process, I mentioned that for this hash function, if you change a slight bit of the input, then it will change its output. It means if we have something modified from the very beginning, the first box, then the output will be changed. Then the content in the second box will be changed, right? And then the third box, the content in the third box will be changed as well, because the output of the second box is changed, and so on and so forth. So in this way, if we already have a chain, a long chain of blocks, we call it block, so a long chain of blocks, then if we made any change, any modification from some earlier box, then it will be reflected in the current box. So that's the most important feature of blockchain. It means that if we already have the blockchain, everyone agree on this blockchain, then no one can change it. If someone or some hacker change the data or change some transactions, like some historic transactions between two parties or between two individuals, then this change will be reflected in the current block, and then everyone can see the change. So that's the essential idea of blockchain.
Great, that's a good good introduction and summary. And I think maybe Håvard, because when I think about the money that I have on my Visa card, to me they're quite digital as well. But how is this different from currency on the blockchain and the currency that we use in our daily lives?
Yeah, so of course, this Bitcoin, based on the technology that Chunlei very elegantly described, of course, is only a digital construction. It doesn't have anything to do with the Norwegian kroner, right? And that's why some people call it digital currency. Some people call it digital cash. Some people call it digital gold. There is no reason for it to have a specific value in Norwegian kroner, for example. This value will be completely determined by people. I think I also want to add to Chunlei's description that I think he explains very well why Bitcoin solves one interesting problem, namely the fact that you can transact it to anyone, anywhere. So for example, with Vipps in Norway, it works it's very convenient, Vipps. You can, to some extent, consider Bitcoin like an international Vipps. If I want to send some Bitcoin to someone, I can do it without, in principle, anyone being able to stop me. Or at least it's very hard to stop me. But what they will end up with, of course, is Bitcoin. And it's hard to guarantee the value of this Bitcoin in the transaction. So, of course, Bitcoin is famous for being used in the Silk Road, which was a now defunct platform for essentially buying drugs. And Bitcoin was then used to buy these drugs. And there was quite some challenges with this because the price of Bitcoin would change so much. So because the people who buy drugs and the people who sell drugs, they were interested in dollars. So this was a problem. But what we have seen is that the value of Bitcoin, so if you just want to transact Bitcoin, the value of these Bitcoins have increased dramatically over the last years, right? And I think this has drawn a lot of attention, and I think I would claim that that's why we're here today, actually, that Bitcoin is extremely valuable, and I think nobody really knows why. I mean, this is a very good question. Why is it valuable? So I don't know if that really answers your question, but that's yeah, you can't really guarantee that it will have a value. You shouldn't compare it to your own bank account. But right now it's very valuable.
Yeah.
I would like to add a comment to Håvard's response for this question. I think most of you are interested or curious about what's the difference between like a Bitcoin platform against the normal bank-based platform, right? I think the major difference is the Bitcoin platform is maintained by anyone in the internet. So it's not maintained by a single entity or single company. That's the major difference. So I forget to mention in my previous description about blockchain, another major feature of blockchain is it is called decentralized. So by decentralized, it means for the blockchain, I mentioned everyone agreed on the current status of all the content in the block. Here, everyone means all the loads or all the communication loads in the internet, or all the participating parties in this platform. These participants, together with a term called miners, they maintain the status of the Bitcoin blockchain. But for traditional banking system, so for all our transactions, either to a friend or to a colleague or to family, they are maintained by the bank behind us, right? So basically, if you transfer, like if you withdraw some money to a friend, you just type the amount of the money, and then you click send. But although it happens very instantly, but in fact, your transaction is sent to the bank, and the bank will verify whether you have this amount of money to send, and also whether you have a legitimate ID, and whether the receiver has legitimate ID. And the bank, although it is automatic, but it happens. So the bank will check all this information and for their customers. And after everything is okay for the verification, then it will send the money to the receiver. But in the banking system, like when we talk about digital currency, it's basically just some numbers, right? So you have 10,000 in your account, you transfer like 1,000 to your friend. Then at the bank system, the banking system just changed the number in both of your accounts. Okay, so subtract 1,000 from your account, from your balance, and add this 1,000 to your friend's balance. That's it. And in blockchain, there's no banking system, or we call this no middleman or third party in this process. All these middleman process operations are maintained by someone or some individuals called miners. These miners, they use the term with the name because they work very hard, and they help maintaining the whole system. So they will get some incentive in this process. So they consider, what are these incentives? They are Bitcoins. So they are transaction fees. It will be sent to the miners. And Håvard mentioned this Bitcoin as a digital gold, right? then so that's where these miners come from. They work very hard, but it's not like manual work. They use some computer systems help contributing to the computing process and then maintaining this process. So it requires a lot of in terms of computations. So it considered to be very intensive computation process. So we consider it's a mining process. That's a major difference, I would say.
Yeah, so that instead of having a central bank that does, or like a bank that does the validation of the transactions, this is done by these miners. We'll come back to energy a bit later, but as you say, this mining, it needs a lot of energy. You probably read in the news these big data centers that are needed to validate these transactions. And there is an ongoing debate on whether we can justify this amount of electricity used on validating these transactions. So I don't know, Jakob, what's your take on this issue?
I think it's important to look beyond just the financial realities that we, as lucky Norwegians, know to inform this discussion, because as was mentioned, VIPs and our entire banking infrastructure is incredibly well developed from a technical standpoint, and even more importantly, from a trust standpoint. So I don't think any of us doubt that if I send Kasper 200 kroner, that is actually going to arrive. There's not going to be a bank in between that might be shady, or it's not going to be so much inflation in the Norwegian krona that by the time Kasper gets his money, he can't actually buy anything with it anymore, which might segue us into El Salvador later. But the point is that when you live in a place in the world where you don't have the luxury of either having access to financial services at all, or living in a place where the central bank actually knows its limits in terms of printing money and creating inflation, then Bitcoin can become a very, very, very important part of your daily life. Because suddenly you can basically circumvent, you can go around the, let's say you have a corrupt central bank or a currency that is worthless, you can just skip right around that, and you can tap into basically the money of the internet, the native currency of the internet. And suddenly you can trade with your, you can buy things with your neighbor, you can buy things from Kasper on the other side of the world, you can support a cause somewhere else, and suddenly you're basically free to do whatever you want with your money. And that's sort of the philosophical basis behind Bitcoin, and a big driver for why so many people around the world are, they almost look at Bitcoin as a religion, because it has political, it's sort of mired together with political views about liberalism and the right to do whatever you want with your resources, for example. And it's also seen as a sort of savior from what many people believe is a quite shady system of central banks basically being able to print as much money as they want and have the population pay the consequence in terms of inflation.
Yeah.
And one final point that was also, I think, worth mentioning is that, as was said, Bitcoin's value is entirely based on whatever people think it is worth. And I think it's worth making the point that that is pretty much true with all fiat currencies, normal currencies also. The only difference one might say is that fiat currencies is traditionally backed by military power. So if you don't comply with whoever sets the rules of the US dollar, for example, you're going to have a problem potentially. But Bitcoin is sort of free from all of that.
That is interesting. So just fiat currency is the Norwegian kroners and the dollars and these regular currencies.
Yeah. So this mining, the argument from Jakob was essentially that mining is some kind of uncomfortable, necessary evil, right? If I understand you, it's a bit annoying that it uses so much energy, but it really is worth it. That's your argument. And I think for people who are not completely convinced, it's a bit annoying to read these news articles because you see, okay, Bitcoin mining uses extremely much energy, but somehow it's still profitable, right? And it's hard to imagine making this illegal, right? Because, I mean, we live in a capitalist free society. If you have a business idea that's profitable, nobody's essentially going to stop you unless it involves violence, right? And Bitcoin mining is a very good example of that. It's not violent. It uses a lot of energy, sure, but it's profitable. And I think one of the reasons that this can be frustrating is because people don't understand where the money comes from. Why is it profitable? And I can definitely answer that. This money comes from Bitcoin, everybody who owns Bitcoin in an abstract sense. More concretely, when you're buying Bitcoin, you might sell it or you might buy it from a miner, because the way mining works, you have these small transaction fees that they get, but the big money comes from what's called block rewards. So every time you find a new block, which you have to search for, and this searching is just, you randomly look, essentially, you pick a number and you see if it's a new block. If you find a new block, right now, you will get, I think, 6.25 Bitcoins, right? And one Bitcoin is like $40,000, right? So 6 Bitcoins is a huge amount of money. So you find your block, and then you can sell your Bitcoin, and then you have made a healthy profit. So if you don't like Bitcoin mining, I think the rational response would be to say, well, okay, I'm not going to buy Bitcoin, because when you're buying Bitcoin, you're subsidizing this. That's where the money comes from. And if I hold Bitcoin, I think I would also be a little bit worried about this, because I know that there is going to be constantly, I'm kind of indirectly paying for this mining by holding it, right? Because it's these block rewards, they always take out money from the system, because the miners have to pay their electricity in dollars or Norwegian kroners. So this is something that you should know about, and that's the reason that mining is so profitable, namely that Bitcoin is so expensive. And it will not stop if the price of Bitcoin keeps going. I think when you talk about the price of something, either it be a stock or a currency like Bitcoin, I think it's best to assume that it's not going to change, right? I mean, of course it's going to change, but you should assume when you plan ahead, you should assume that it stays at the same level. And if it does stay at the same level, Bitcoin mining is going to continue. It's extremely profitable, and people are going to buy computers just for this. And it may be frustrating, but that's how it is when it's so extremely profitable to do this mining. Mm-hmm. And I'm worried about it, I can say.
And I think this kind of different perspectives that we have is interesting when it comes to if we think about the discussion as, you know, what is the infrastructure that is developing here, because there's definitely disadvantages, for example, related to electricity and the volatility of the currency, for example. Say that you would use this as an actual currency, that you would go and buy groceries with it. And so the perspective coming from Norway, where we have trust in the system and a stable and well-working economy, we might have a different take on this than, for example, what they have in El Salvador. And Jakob, can you quickly tell us what's going on in El Salvador?
Yeah, sure. So the short version is that El Salvador, as many of its neighboring countries in the region, has had some economic issues throughout the times, particularly relating to inflation. And they have, for a couple of years now, had a very visionary and tech positive president, a young dude who is very active on Twitter and in the tech community, and he's sort of taken this image as the tech savior for the country, so to speak. So instead of trying to deal with the inflation of their own local currency, which turned out to be very, very difficult, he quite simply decided to make Bitcoin legal tender, which means that every store and every little kiosk and everyone who offers anything in the market in El Salvador must accept Bitcoin as payment. And this happened a couple of months ago, I believe, or a year ago, something like that. And it is the first country in the world to make Bitcoin legal tender. Many people believe that others will follow, but now the entire crypto world is basically looking to El Salvador to see whether this works and how it works, and to what extent they're able to deploy the infrastructure to suddenly make this the currency not just something theoretical up in the cloud that is very untangible and hard to understand, but actually make it a part of the daily lives of anyone, basically.
Yeah, and I think this test of the infrastructure is something that is worthwhile spending more time on, because I think you can definitely see traits of a bubble similar to what you saw with the .com bubble, for example, that you had a huge development in everything that had to do with the internet. But it also kind of fueled the development of broadband. So, all the abilities we have today using VIPs, for example, it was made possible because there was such a big interest into this, and there was such a big hype that enabled this development of infrastructure. While a lot of, these great ideas at the time, they didn't kind of last when the bubble burst. So I think that's interesting to kind of tie together the El Salvador case, the electricity, and kind of how this will maybe, also withhold in the future. Because one of the problems with the Bitcoin is that it uses a lot of energy. However, they're trying to kind of overcome that by having this lightning kind of infrastructure that's put on top. And I think that's worthwhile, spending some time on, because this is maybe, what will kind of be left with going ahead. And I think what is crucial, if the case for El Salvador, for example, should work in actually expanding, the use of cryptocurrency to a whole population.
Can I maybe add some facts on El Salvador before we discuss the Lightning Network? So I just have some facts here. So first of all, they started using the dollar. I don't know when, but there wasn't a change directly from their own currency to Bitcoin. They first started using the dollar, the American dollar, because they had trouble with inflation in their own currency. And now they have starting to use Bitcoin besides the dollar. But people care about the dollars, make no mistake. So they have this Bitcoin law, which is this law that says that Bitcoin should be used as a currency. This was passed on the 8th of June by Nayib Bukele, his administration. and it took effect on the 7th of September 2021. And a very interesting fact is that, so they made their own version of VIPS somehow called the Chivo wallet, which allows you to transact Bitcoin between people in El Salvador. What's funny about this is that these transactions don't actually happen on the Bitcoin network because the Bitcoin network is expensive to use. I like to say that Bitcoin is too expensive to trade Bitcoin. And so this Chivo wallet doesn't have anything to do with the Bitcoin network. But anyway, it works because the Bitcoins are there. It's not, and the Bitcoins are really somehow tied to the wallet anyway. And what they did to make people interested in using Bitcoin and these Chivo wallets in particular, they gave every El Salvadorian $30 in Bitcoin on their Chivo wallet. And on this same day as they did, there was a flash crash in the price of Bitcoin. It dropped 10, 15% in just one day. So the El Salvadorians really got to feel this volatility that we've been talking about really very close. And they saw this value that they had in the wallet drop from maybe $30 to $20 back to about $25 in like 24 hours. And for people in El Salvador, $30 can be a substantial amount of money. I mean, I checked the cost of living. Apparently, the cost of living is about half of Norway. But I think that ignores the fact that you have a lot more poverty as well, right? So you can't just look at averages. So for a lot of people, this $30 is a lot of money. And a lot of people, El Salvadorians, aren't really interested in these huge swings in their money. And another important fact about this is that the president, Nayib Bukele, he's also spent a lot of the public's money on buying Bitcoin. And this is essentially a bet on the price of Bitcoin, right? And so far they have bought, I think, 1,800 Bitcoins. This is worth about 54 million American dollars today. And I think it's important to say that this is quite a bet. I mean, this would be like if the oil fund was betting, I don't know, maybe 500 million Norwegian kroner or something like that on a football match in Europe. I would claim it's the same kind of bet. And the reason I claim this is the same kind of bet is that if you want to make money on Bitcoin, here's your strategy. You buy it at some point and then you sell it when the price is higher. This is what almost everybody is trying to do. But not everybody can win at this game, right? Because there's only as much money as everybody is betting, right? So somebody has to lose if somebody is going to win. This is like if you're playing poker with friends, the maximum amount you can win is all the chips on the table, right? And the maximum amount you can lose are all your own chips. This is what's called a zero-sum game. The sum of all the winnings minus the losses is a zero. Now, Bitcoin is slightly worse. Bitcoin is a negative-sum game because you have to pay the miners, right? You have to pay the miners to keep the system going. So on average, you're going to lose money on Bitcoin. That's why I'm saying this is a pretty big bet from Nayib Bukele. I don't know if that's a reasonable thing to do with your money when you are in charge of a country like El Salvador. I think this is a pretty bold move.
Yeah, I would like add some comments. I totally agree with Håvard about the administrator's action or reaction to Bitcoin. I consider it's not just a bet; it's very risky. Håvard mentioned Bitcoin is like zero sum. By zero sum, like you have like either you win money or lose money, but all the amount of the money is fixed. In Bitcoin, there are two facts. Maybe some people ignore. The one fact is like I mentioned Bitcoin was invented in 2008, and the platform was initiated in the beginning of 2009. And from 2009 to 2014, the price of Bitcoin can be basically neglected. It's very small. And to me, it's like for uncertain reason, like since 2014, and then price started going up. And to 2017, it's already maybe around like $10,000 for one Bitcoin. But previously, maybe around 2012, it's like I remember some one miner holding like a 50 Bitcoin to buy a pizza for that, and it's a quite a big kind of news like later on. But at that moment, it's just nothing because no one see the value of Bitcoin. And during this whole process from 2009 to 2014, one fact most people ignore is half of all the Bitcoins in this in the, let's say, the box of all the Bitcoins have already been mined, and no one knows where these more than half of the Bitcoin go to. It could be held by some individual, some person, or some organization, but at the moment, no one knows where are these more than half of all the Bitcoins. And for the whole country, they may take all the public money to buy maybe less than 50% of all these Bitcoins. So it's a very fragile, in my view. Like if maybe just one person or maybe an organization, they can attack the economy of the whole country. Just maybe take more than 10% of the Bitcoin he has or the organization has, then it's enough. And another factor about this zero sum for Bitcoin is, Håvard mentioned, it's a negative zero sum. And it's even worse. Like if you hold Bitcoin in your wallet, and this Bitcoin is proved to be yours, like this ownership is proved by your signature. And this signature was generated based on the person's password. And you don't store this password in your wallet, or mostly you shouldn't have like this kind of behavior, like store your password directly in your wallet. And it has happened several times. Some people holding a big amount of Bitcoin in the wallet and forget the password. And if the user forget the password, basically the user cannot use these all the Bitcoins in his wallet or in her wallet. In that way, no one can help. Then basically, this Bitcoin just disappear. So it has happened several times. Some people just they store all the Bitcoins in a hard disk and put in the drawer for a while, maybe more than 5 years, and then treat the disk as other garbage together and then throw it away. And then suddenly realize, I have lost maybe 1 million Norwegian kroner. So that's a pretty scary thing as well in my mind.
Yeah, and this is great. It's a lot of interesting thoughts. Time is going very fast. So I'm thinking just before we open the floor to the audience, I think we can take like a short run of kind of where do you see this going? What are your predictions for the future? Maybe you start, Jacob?
Yeah, sure. Just a quick comment on the last points that about zero sum. I totally agree with that. But the other perspective on that is that someone who's pro Bitcoin would say that the fact that there is a finite supply of coins is a feature of the system, not a bug. Because you have to think about what are you comparing this to? What's the alternative? And the alternative is the fiat system, the normal currencies that we have today, which does not have a limit on how many coins or how many dollars or how many kroners can be produced. So with Bitcoin, at least everybody knows how many coins will ever be in circulation. And that's kind of the point, because that means that nobody can be sitting in the central bank one day and just decide that, hey, let's just print another X amount of US dollars out of thin air and just suddenly from one day to the next, there's way more money in circulation than there was the previous day. And that has all kinds of inflation problems and trust issues as well. So I would personally argue that the fact that Bitcoin is zero sum, in the sense that you know how much money is in circulation in the system, is better than the alternative. But to wrap this, or to try to look into the future, I think it's a little unfortunate that this discussion was so Bitcoin exclusive, because Bitcoin is one very interesting use case of blockchain technology, absolutely. But there are countless other things that blockchains are used for at the moment and will be used for in the future that we didn't have time to touch on right now. But there is an entire new term called Web3, which basically it talks about a new generation of the internet that is being built on blockchains and on decentralized platforms, which is basically a move away from the centralized players that have dominated the internet for the last 15 years, the Googles and Facebooks and Amazons of the world. And in this Web3 movement, at least this is the hypothesis, you will make the users of internet services into the owners as well. So instead of all the value and the ownership of information and so on that happens in these networks, in, for example, Facebook, instead of all that value and all that data belonging to Zuck and his people, and they capitalizing on your personal data, for example, in a Web3 or crypto equivalent of Facebook, the users would instead be distributed that value back to themselves. So I could say, okay, I want to share this much of my data. That creates this amount of economic gain because I can sell it to advertisers or whatever. And that the profits from that would come back to me. So if people are interested in this, I would recommend just Googling Web3 and start going down the rabbit hole. It's a lot of exciting stuff going on, not just in financial services, but in all kinds of new use cases.
Yeah, thank you. So I think what you see from the perspectives here is quite big difference in kind of the world view of the future. But I think we have to open the floor for the audience to make sure that they get to ask the question.
Yes, hello. Thank you for a good conversation on crypto. So I was kind of interested in the fact that yes, normal currency is controlled by government, but wouldn't that also be a big stabilizer? It kind of allows government to do conjuncture politics and keep the economy stable, for example, with lowering interest rates. And I would like to kind of get that comparison between that normal currencies and the fact that crypto is, if a recession hits on cryptocurrency, especially like, for example, Bitcoin, where a lot of people have a lot of money in them, and the value just keep on dropping because no one really believes that they can make any more money from it, that could have pretty grave consequences with millions of even more money lost in the system. And I was like wondering what aspects of that, or just discuss around that aspect at least.
So I think you can probably answer the economics of this, but I agree with your concern. I'm also concerned about this, but I think it's important to remember that when you're buying some Bitcoin, you lose your money at that time. Okay, I give you my money and I get some Bitcoin, right? My money is already gone. If I want my money back, I'm going to have to sell my Bitcoin, right? So if you have a savings account or some maybe Kaupan Crypto or Fieri or something, which are the two large Norwegian brokers for crypto, You have 10,000 kroner there. You don't have 10,000 kroner there. You have a little bit of Bitcoin, right? Your money is already gone. The Bitcoin is there, but your money is gone. So hopefully you can get it back, right, by selling it to someone else. But it's obvious if the Bitcoin price falls, and I mean, yeah, it has been falling maybe 50% for the past 3 months, but that's nothing. I mean, that's very mild. If the Bitcoin price falls maybe 95% in 10 seconds, a lot of people are going to be very surprised. That's not impossible. That's definitely something that can happen. I'm worried about a lot of things like this. I'm worried about price manipulation in Bitcoin, which might sound crazy. Like, how can you manipulate the price of something like this? I think there are a lot of possible risks that can happen. There are a lot of really dangerous things that can happen to the Bitcoin economy. And I think something like that could happen, and it would be very, very bad. And I think it can happen, absolutely.
Yeah, and also from an economic perspective, I share the same concern as you do, that of course you can criticize a lot a well-functioning central bank, and but there's still at least a lot of smart people, at least in our country, that does a lot of effort to try to keep the economy stable, and kind of where this mechanisms there in Bitcoin. I don't know. Do you know, Jakob?
I think it just comes down to who or what you want to trust to make the right choices, economic choices. And again, I just have to reiterate what I said initially. This is kind of difficult for us to wrap our heads around, since we live in a well-functioning society with a central bank that seems at least relatively up to speed and trying to do the right thing. But if you live in a place where that isn't the case, I would much rather trust a decentralized system that doesn't have an agenda than that is totally apolitical and just run by technology, than to trust some more or less corrupt central banker who has his own interests at heart. And you don't even have to go to like crazy underdeveloped central banks just to start questioning whether they really are doing the right thing. If you look at, for example, the US dollar, they've printed about, I think it's 30 or 40% of all the US dollars that have ever been in existence since the beginning of the currency was printed since COVID. And that just makes you think, what are the global long-term implications of that kind of money printing policy that is just about flushing the system with cash? And again, it just comes down to what you personally believe will lead to the best outcomes, whether that's a centralized bunch of central bankers making decisions to serve all kinds of political needs, or if it's a decentralized system that doesn't have a political agenda.
Yeah, so different points of view on that. Other questions?
Hi, hello. I was wondering, do you guys own any NFTs? And if so, which NFTs projects do you have? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I tried to buy an NFT, but I gave up in the process. I don't know about you guys.
So for me, like I see Bitcoin and NFT blockchain. These are very nice technologies, and I'm definitely with all these new technologies. But so far, I haven't bought any Bitcoin, any cryptocurrency like a Dogecoin, and not even an NFT.
I'm sorry, I don't own any NFTs either. I wouldn't mind just for fun, but it's not something I would speculate on, I think.
And I know, Jakob, you can be the one with the NFTs, right? And also tell us
know.
what the NFTs are.
Yeah, I know. I own a lot of NFTs, mostly for fun, mostly to learn about the stuff. NFTs are basically digital art, or digital art is one example of NFTs. It means non-fungible tokens, and it at the very essence of it, it just enables digital ownership. So ownership of digital files that is proven on the blockchain. So you can either just go in and sort of like right-click on a JPEG and save it to your computer. That's one way to look at a piece of art. But when you buy it as an NFT, you actually have the verification that the ownership belongs to you. And when you get digital ownership, you get digital scarcity, and then you get speculation and all kinds of financial fun and weirdness.
Good.
From my point of view, as a cryptographer, I basically see, maybe I'm wrong, but I basically see an NFT as a new way, like using cryptography to protect copyrights or ownership. And this is performed in decentralized way. So they put this copyright, like signed by some users, some owner, and put this data to the blockchain. And I didn't see the big difference between the data stored in the blockchain. Like either it's transactions, it's image, or it's a file, it's a video, whatever. So in my view, these are some data. These are some data. They stored in the blockchain and it cannot be changed. And that's it. So that's also like brings like the great applications of cryptography in the real world. And also it has opened a big door for applications of blockchain in different areas, not just for cryptocurrency. It can be used to protect our healthcare data, can be used to protect the supply chain, and so on and so forth.
Good. I think we have time for one last question. We have one on the chat here, which is related to this issue of the central bank versus cryptocurrency, and that printing of money, as the central banks do, is a tool to stabilize the economy and kind of control the value of the currency.
So maybe, yeah, so of course the central bank in Norway, they have a goal of having a long-term inflation of about 2%. And what's important about this number is that it's stable and low. So you know that, yes, there will be inflation. Everybody knows this. We learned this from a young age. You see the price of a Coke bottle go from 12 to 13 kroner and you're really mad. And then you learn that this is completely normal. People who are very interested in Bitcoin or think that Bitcoin will be the future, one of the premises for this is that at some point, because of the way economic policy is today, we will have hyperinflation. Everybody agrees that 2% inflation is no problem. Some people think that we will have hyperinflation. People have been arguing this. This is nothing new with Bitcoin. People have been saying this about gold. People are hoarding gold because they expect hyperinflation. So far, it's not happened. I trust that the central banks with the people with PhDs from NTNU keep this in control, that we have a low and stable inflation. And yeah, so that's my point of view on this question. Yeah, absolutely. And this was, inflation in other countries, that was the comment, that this hyperinflation can be a big problem. This was a problem in El Salvador. I don't know the details there, But when they made the change to the dollar, this really helped. So I think there are competent central banks, and I don't think that cryptocurrency necessarily solves it.
Yeah. All right. Let's take one.
I was just wondering about the, if you guys know anything about the upcoming inflation crisis in the US. You guys just talked about the 2% thing. I think the inflation in the US right now is above 5 or something. I'm not sure about the number, but it's like crazy high and it's going to hell, basically. And as you all know, what the US does, it affects everyone else. For example, Norway. So I'm on Twitter and everything, so I don't know if everything's true, but from what I've read, it's like the 2008 economic crisis is going to look fun comparing to what's coming. What do you guys think?
I think we have to draw the line, kind of leave that as a cliffhanger, because where will the economy go and what will be the role of cryptocurrency? Because we're running out of time, but I want to thank the panel for a great discussion. Everyone who showed up, thank you very much. And thank you to Vagle Global for hosting the event.